What's up? This is Fling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 8 Millie Maker review. There is a phenomenon going on right now in large field GPPs, something that is completely different from what we've seen in years past, that is working at a very high rate. So we're going to jump into that. Let's do it. All right, so the Millie Maker winner, Rick12324, and it's going to be another naked QB build. And, you know, this player, it's funny because when we see like a lot of these each and every week, you know, oftentimes it could just be like one lineup, it could just be a crazy one-off. And, you know, that we've seen a few of these naked builds that have won the Millie Maker. And it's like, well, you know, what can we really gain from that? And oftentimes it's not really a lot because, you know, it's just one lucky lineup that they probably made on the toilet, right? But with this player, you know, I saw on X, on Twitter, whatever we call it these days, he, you know, posted a few tweets. And this is a player that's 150 maxer, has won several large field GPPs. So, you know, this is obviously a trend that we're seeing that we want to look at, kind of identify, you know, what is the field doing differently this year to where we've now seen 50% of the Millie Maker winners have a naked QB build. So we're going to take a look at his lineup. And then, by the way, we're also going to get into Sliders MME Strategy. Sliders, I think Sliders is, well, first off, he's a DFS Army VIP, but I think he's one of the top NFL DFS players in the world because he consistently ranks high in the Millie Maker. This is the third time, I believe, this year that he's placed top 25 in the Millie Maker. So we're going to take a look at his lineups as well. But let's jump right into what won the Millie Maker. This was a Bo Nix build, naked, and it did have some stacking in it, but Bo Nix was not stacked with one of his pass catchers. Now, you did have a Chuba Hubbard bring back. So Nix with the Chuba bring back. Nix had 29 points. Really ended up being the nuts QB because I think Jalen Hurts had like 35 points. So, but he had better tournament winning value just at the price tag of 5,600. That's over 5x his salary, almost 5.5x. So really good value there. And then we did have the stacks that we did have. We had Bijan Robinson and K. Dotton. So little ping pong stack here between Bijan and K. Dotton. We had James Cook stacked with the defense, so running back versus defense. So that's one thing that, you know, I think is important when we look at these naked builds is they always have some type of correlation in it. So I think the thought process here, and I can tell you this as a Broncos fan, is the wide receiver room is very hard to predict. This week it was Courtland Sutton, who, you know, got like 11 targets, caught 8 balls in a great matchup. Week 7, it was a pretty good matchup as well. Like, he didn't catch any balls. Some weeks it's Vele. Some weeks it's, you know, it was Josh Reynolds before he got shot. I'm glad he's doing okay. You know, Jordan Humphrey, you know, Franklin. So it's very hard to predict. So I think there are certain teams that it's okay to have them out there without one of their pass catchers. Specifically, a guy like Nix that we know is 5,600. He's cheaper. It's much easier for him to get tournament winning value as opposed to, you know, and not bringing anyone with him, as opposed to like a guy like Lamar Jackson, you know, who is priced high, for example, or Josh Allen. Unless they have multiple rushing touchdowns, like if they're passing, there's someone that they're probably bringing with him. And, you know, I will say this, even though this was what won the Millie Maker, there were higher scores in the mini max that were stacked. Bo Nix to Courtland Sutton, for example. So, but, you know, he won. And one thing I'll notice here when I was going through his builds, and I think this is something that DFS Army VIPs would know. I do think you can like boost. We have like the same boost at DFS Army to where you don't have to necessarily always force a stack, but you can boost it to if you have a QB in the lineup, that his wide receivers get a boost. So it'll be like more natural that they will get in there. So you'll have some builds like Rick here, where this one's unstacked. But if we go down the line here, we could see, let me find the Bo Nix lineups. He did have one Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton that I saw. Not this one. Not that one. Yep, Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton. So not setting universal rules, just more so boosting players so that they sometimes appear in the lineup. But let's take a look at his exposures, see what he kind of did. And one thing I noticed is very flat user exposures or player exposures. So CJ Stroud, 10%, and that's the highest owned guy. So, he really had a lot of different quarterbacks here, with nobody being over 10%. And then, when I look at the running backs and specifically at wide receiver, I do believe he probably uses an optimizer with a lot of randomization to never really be too high on any one player. Interesting that, Chuba gets into the winning lineup with only 9 points, not even 2x his salary. And he had 22% exposure to him. Now, the Jacobs play was good. J.K. Dobbins, decent, not great. The Cook here being 5x the field, that's a good play, 11% Cook. Devin H. Hahn, you want to eat that chalk, so that was good chalk to eat. Swift popping in some lineups there. And then, even on the field on Joe Mixon, and really faded Javonte and Breece Hall. And that is really probably the fades that were needed. Now, sometimes you just get lucky, right? Because Bijan, only 4% Bijan, he ended up in the winning lineup. And you had, less of him than you had Javonte and Breece Hall. But, when you got guys that are chalk, that's a great way to leverage the field, is having those fades on a slate and really hitting with those fades. Guessing the right ones. Now, when we go to wide receivers, Tyreek Hill was the guy that he decided, I'm going to be way over the field on him. He was 30% owned, but almost 50% ownership. And then you got a couple of guys at 20. But other than that, like a ton of wide receivers. I think maybe he had like almost 50 wide receivers here. And you start looking at it, and that's how you get positive leverage to get like Cedric Tillman in the lineup and not completely fade all of these low end guys. And you look it back and you're like, oh, I only had 1% of the guy that you needed to have. The guy that was like 6, maybe even 8x the salary. I'm pretty sure it's 8x the salary. So a lot of randomness and getting a lot of different combinations of players, but also, not really being too high on anyone. And that's one way to certainly do it. Obviously, like the Tyreek Hill spot, and I did too, you got a mispriced player. So just eating that chalk, that makes sense. But, no one else above 20%. So really getting a good mix of players and being able to hit the nuts. Yoshi Voss freaking burned me. I definitely should have been on more under than where I ended up with him, because that was, it's one of those things where it's like you nail so many things right about the slate. Like you're high on a lot of guys that do smash, and you're over the field there, but it's like having just too much exposure of like one person that really burns you. So, Rick didn't have to have that. He clearly didn't have that because he won the Millie. But, for the rest of us, that's kind of how that feels. And then K. Dotton, a lot of K. Dotton. That was such a good spot for K. Dotton. It just made more sense to have more of Otten than Palmer and McMillan, because, we saw him get 11 targets the game before. And, we knew he was going to get targeted, as opposed to guessing which value wide receiver is going to go off. And yeah, that was really the highest guy. And then just, 16% or less on everyone else. I like it. No, not too crazy on any defenses. Faded Denver and the Chargers. So, definitely the Denver chalk defense. Chalk defenses fail so often. So that's going to do it for Rick. So our boy Sliders, and by the way, we're gonna look at his lineup here. But Sliders, he has, I think this is second time where he's placed top 10 in the Millie. He's definitely had 3 top 25 finishes. And this goes back, like, that's just this year. This goes back years. Like, he crushes it. And he puts in the work. Like, the results speak for themselves. I actually was talking to him a little bit earlier in the Discord today, and he said that he puts in 40 hours a week just in NFL DFS preparation. So the results speak for themselves. And, I really feel for him because I was watching this game, and he was actually winning the Millie. He was going to win it, and Cortland Sutton fumbled the ball right as he was about to score a touchdown, and Sliders would have won the Millie. So he ended up finishing third with 50,000, but his time is definitely coming. And, one of the things he's mentioned in the past about the DFS Army is the domination station, how it is so customizable, and, you can tweak it exactly how you want it to work for you so that you can put your feel on the slate. So that is one of his kind of secrets to his success is the preparation, but also the domination station, being able to customize it to do what you want it to do. And right now, if you want to try us out, 50% off your first month. I'm surprised this promotion is still going on. I don't expect it to go on much longer, but code VIP50 will get you 50% off your first month. This gives you access to the domination station, the cheat sheet, the research station, all the tools, and of course the Discord community. So definitely check it out. Give us a try. If you don't like it, you can quit after your first month. But so his lineup, he had Nix to Sutton. Now, he also had Jahmyr Gibbs and Detroit D. So much like the Millie Maker winner, he had that running back stacked with the defense. And what I really love here is this was such a good spot for Gibbs. Like, in the running game, like these running backs were going to be under-owned during a game total where they had, they had a 28-point flag team total. Like, it just made so much sense to play Detroit running backs here. And obviously he did. And, we're going to look at his exposures. He certainly made it a point to get some Gibbs. And then, as far as other stacks, that looks to be it. So Nix to Sutton. And then we had Gibbs and Detroit D. So, yeah, and then the second stack was a 300 place. So very close for him. It's tough. Really tough watching that. But I know his time is certainly coming to win the Millie. But let's take a look at Sliders' exposures real quick. So, he will typically – he's going to run the domination station over and over until he gets what he wants, his fill of the slate, how he thinks it's going to play out. And, obviously at quarterback, he wasn't like making any strong stands really. He was slightly over on Nix. He was basically even with the field on Nix and Love. And, a little bit of Tua, Cousins, Mahomes, a lot of the same quarterbacks that I had this week. No one over 20%, no one over 15%. Now, at running back is where he really, you could see he took some stands. So he was under on Javonte Williams, and I get that. And, it really makes sense because if you think Nix is going to potentially have a good game, like, it just made so much sense that one of those chalk pieces were going to fail. Nix was chalk and Javonte Williams was chalk. It was unlikely that they both got there. The Broncos offense, isn't like some juggernaut of an offense that's going to score 50 points. So, it's really kind of one or the other. He played, he was over on Knicks and under on Javonte Williams. So I love that. He also was a little bit under on Joe Mixon, was under on Dobbins. And, that certainly didn't burn you. Under on Henry. Henry didn't get a lot of carries, so that was a pretty good call. And then basically even with the field on Breece Hall. But the spots where he really wanted to be over, and ended up paying off, obviously, with DeAndre Swift. He had a good game. He had some James Conner. Devin Achane had a good game, with 32% exposure to him, and then Gibbs. So he was quadruple the field on Gibbs and on James Cook, 5x the field. So, these plays right here, I think were obviously really sharp, especially mixed in with DeAndre Swift. And, and that really helped him having a really good day here. Obviously, I understand the thought process here. Tyreek Hill. Everyone is playing Tyreek Hill, who's getting 30% ownership, and I believe he had him too. He was basically dead even with the field on Tyreek Hill. But people are sleeping on Jalen Waddle, who's getting like half the ownership of Tyreek Hill. So it's just a direct leverage play, being double the field there. Played enough Sutton. I like the Vele play, just didn't work out. Kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier. I do think in some situations, like, it is worthwhile to just play some certain QBs naked. Like, there is merit to it. It's all about like your philosophy and what you think, because this was a good spot for Vele, and he had been getting targeted a lot. He had 18% Vele and only 3% Sutton. So it's interesting that, he had so much more Vele than Sutton, and yet almost won the millie. And then in the end, Sutton ended up screwing him anyway. It's tough. But, one of the big plays here, obviously, Cedric Tillman. He was over on Tillman. He liked him. Shepard, this definitely hurt some of his lineups, not his millie lineup because he wasn't there, or, the third place millie lineup. But Shepard got hurt. Pretty sure he left that game early. It was a good game for Devonta Smith. So, that was a really good play that worked out for him. And, yeah, there's nothing else that really and faded Drake London. So I love that because obviously London did not have a good day. And part of the reason London did not have a good day is because Darnell Mooney and Kyle Pitts had the good day. So that's one of the things about, tournament strategy is wide receiver ones, they fill more often than like running back ones in good spots. So, and the reason they do is because of touchdown variance. Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts taking a catch and then running 40 yards with it for a touchdown. So you double the field on Mooney while he was under on Drake London. And then Kate Otten, I loved this play. That was just good chalk to me. I just totally understood that chalk. And then Disley and Kelsey. And there's really nothing else there. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, obviously, one thing that stands out is, playing a lot of different wide receivers. And, I'm guessing he probably uses quite a bit of randomization. But that said, still wanted to, go heavy in a few spots. So I want to take a look at Hishbu and then wrap this up. Now, Hishbu, 3, 4, 5, place 6th here. I'm pretty sure he's won the millie before. Now, one thing about him is he does have a lot of duplicates. Like 140 is pretty high for duplicates. It's not as high as like Tom JK here, but quite a few. But I think Hishbu has won the millie before, or definitely placed top 5 in it often, because he's a name that he or she is a name that I certainly put down. So wanted to hop in and take a look at this MME strategy as well. So this top lineup was a Herbert to McConkey stack with J.K. Dobbins. So got the running back in there. Got Gibbs, Achon, Jamar Chase, had the Cedric Tillman play. So gosh, Tillman, McConkey, and K-Dot, and like those three really kind of carried the lineup here. Yeah, and I'm not seeing any other stacks. So this is essentially just a Herbert plus 2 stack with J.K. Dobbins being one of those players. Also had a Bo Nix stack to Cortland Sutton. Really good looking lineup. And this is impressive. Hishbu had 2 lineups in the top 25. So really good stuff. Let's kind of look at exposures. Also have J.K. Dobbins and LA Chargers stack right there. 3 in the top 100. Wow. Now this one was next to Sutton as well. A lot of J.K. Dobbins, it's looking like. So yeah, let's hop into these exposures. Okay. So quarterback. Nothing crazy. Faded Love. I mean, the thing about Love is you never know because he'll have slow starts and then he'll finish the game with like 25 points. But in this spot, obviously he got hurt and this ended up being a good fade. I think more times than not, it's just a good idea to fade chalk quarterbacks in tournaments that are over 7K, or just chalk quarterbacks in general. Like, the tutties go to the running back, or the offense just kind of is stagnant and you kind of leverage the field there. Joe Burrow and Herbert and Rodgers, those were looking like the top 3 exposures. No one high, though. So played 17 quarterbacks, none above 16%. So getting a little bit of everybody. Now, clearly went in on a couple spots. Devin Achon and Javonte Williams. Now, kind of the opposite of sliders. A little under the field on Bo Nix, but way over the field on Javonte. Now, I understand that thought process, and there's really 2 ways you can look at that, right? It's, the Broncos were like a 10-point, 11-point favorites. So it's a really good spot for the running back. But also, there's the other side of that is like, well, Javonte has been very consistent this year. He's had one big game. So, that's probably why sliders went that route, fading him. And then Hishbu, on the other hand, the other side of the coin was like, well, I'm going to play the running back, on a team that's favored by 10-plus points. So he obviously went in there. He liked J.K. Dobbins and Devin Achon. And, really these exposures are fine except for the fact that, just had too much Javonte and he didn't get there. But I loved Mixon on the slate. I liked Jacobs. Slept on DeAndre Swift a little bit, but loved Achon, loved Dobbins. So, these were a lot of the plays we were on at DFS Army for sure. But yeah, Breece Hall. And, this is what helped him. $7,300 running back who failed. You're basically half the field there. So that certainly helped him. 14 running backs in total he had, and twice as many wide receivers. So, like I said, Yoshivas killed me, and clearly probably killed Hishbu from winning the Millie. And it's one of those things where oftentimes it's just, could be a 1-for-1. Now, luckily he had Cedric Tillman, because if he had been way under on Tillman, but he had, so much Yoshi, like that could just be like a 1-for-1. That could have been the difference, but he did have a lot of Tillman. So, if you could push a little bit more of the Yoshi chips, maybe capped him at like 20% and got some more Tillman, who knows, might have won. But really good at least getting McConkey and Tillman into the lineup. And yeah, Jalen McMillan, definitely not enough, not tournament winning. So, very risky having this much exposure to value guys, and it can pay off or it can bite you for sure. But yeah, being 8x the field on McConkey, that certainly helps. Chase had a pretty good day, but not tournament winning value alone by himself. I know he ended up in the millie, but he was only 2.5x the salary, so that was really just being carried by guys like Tillman, Otten, and McConkey. And then under on Tyreek Hill. So, Tyreek Hill did not get there, so that was a good fade. So, this is kind of how these things go. You're trying to pick the right spots where you want to be over the field, and you're trying to pick the right spots where you want to be under the field. Absolutely nailed being this far over the field on Cade Otton. And Njoku had a good day. I think Ingram caught a touchdown. So nailed that, and nailed Tyreek Hill being under there, but was over on Javonte, was over on Yoshi Voss, McMillan. So, those types of decisions hurt, but that's going to wrap it up for this week. And thank you for joining me for another Millie Maker review. Like I said, guys, VIP 50, that'll give you DFS Army 50% off for your first month. So I will put that link in the video description. This promotion is not going to be running much longer. I'm actually kind of surprised it's still running because it was supposed to be over. So get it while you can. If you like this kind of content, let me know. Hit that like button. Let me know who was the person who crushed your Millie Maker dreams this past week. Drop that in the comments. We'll see y'all next week.